This is the Bears Barroom Radio Network. The following program is recorded live and intended for all audiences.
Radio is scripted now. We just come up with it. We don't use computers. We don't rehearse. We're going to talk about this next. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Bulls. And then we're going to have Brad Bixon. And then we're going to have all this. No. If you don't know what you're going to talk about in the top of your head before a show, you shouldn't be in the business. I don't know what you got. I feel like Vince Vaughn in a couple's retreat. The Sharks are circling. Old school, baby.
You're listening to the Mike North Advantage, and it begins right now.
That's right, the Mike North Advantage starts right now. I am Aldo Gandia, Mike's wingman, and I gotta tell you something. Yesterday, I worked with Les Grobstein and David Schuster on their debut episode of the Grobstein-Schuster Zone, and today I am working with the great Mike North and his guest, John Shaky Siuntres. I have gone to radio heaven. Mike North, how are you, my friend?
How are you, Aldo? Great job. Big news out on It's Trending. Grabber, David Schuster, my good friends, with Bears Bar Room now doing a podcast, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, Grabber from the pride and joy of Von Steuben High School. David, a northern suburb guy. And I'll tell you what, you couldn't ask for better guys. So it's a beautiful thing, my friend. So, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a lot of other things. We're going to be taking some time off. We're going to start our show around the third week again of July, the Mike North Advantage with Aldo Gandia and yours truly, award-winning in the communist black countries. And what's beautiful about it is that we have had a guest list. I said, listen, let's shoot for the penthouse. Let's shoot for the 100th floor. Okay, let's shoot to where the elevator has trouble, where you hear the gears grinding, because we've had them all. We've had Ditka, we've had Theismann, we've had Cole Kmet, we've had them all, Zorich, you know? And then I said, who can we get to have some fun with for the last show until we come back in July? And who do I said to myself, if I'm going to get some laughs, it's my buddy. You can catch him. Believe me when I tell you this, and he's doing a tremendous job with what he does at John Word Balloon. I said today, boxing, movies, comics, television, with one talented guy, and that is what he is, John Siuntres. What's up, Shaky?
How you doing, Mike? Thanks for having me on, man. I didn't know I was helping you wrap up the season. This is nice.
Well, you know what? It's sort of like when I watched the Western Channel. You know, the Virginian, for God's sake. They used to do an hour and a half episodes, 29 shows a year. Now Larry David comes out with 6 one-hour shows, and everybody falls all over themselves. And, you know, you had Cheyenne. You had all these other TV shows that used to have to churn out, you know, episode after episode with basically the same byline, but that's how television was back then.
Absolutely, man. So are the Grabber and Schuster, are they like your summer replacement? Are they like Greco coming in to doing Jackie Gleason's show for the summer?
Yeah, it's going to be like, I remember the Cowsills had a summer variety show.
There you go.
Yeah, or no, they're going to be permanent, and I'll tell you what, it's going to be fun.
Nice.
Yeah, they're going to, from what I understand, you know, the Grabber, of course, the pride and joy of Von Steuben, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Wanted to talk to you about every category I mentioned, but about one specific thing in each category. So let's go to boxing first. I was surprised to see that Ali Frazier hadn't been shown for 34 years. Now, during the quarantine situation, it's been one of their most viewed items. So what was the situation with that? Do you have any idea? I mean, did somebody own the rights? Because ESPN all of a sudden decides to show it. They played a little with the commentary. They have some Don Dumphy stuff. They have some Burt Lancaster stuff. What was that? Do you know anything about that, Shake?
Well, I don't know who owns the rights to the original broadcast these days, but that right. I would guess that it might be Bill Caton's old company, whoever's running Big Fights Incorporated, because they did. I mean, smart people in broadcasting did grab all the rights to the big fights. And obviously that's an epic fight. And, Mike, for that original broadcast, it was an event. I mean, this was closed circuit, the precursor to pay-per-view. And, yeah, isn't it funny? They got Burt Lancaster to host. Don Dunphy was the actual play-by-play guy. And, they made it into this event broadcast and stuff. And that's why it was so big. It doesn't surprise me that it got the big audience because, my God, it's such a dramatic fight. And it was a close fight. I mean, Frazier won. I think everyone agrees.
Yeah.
But, man, Ali gave him everything he could handle, and both guys wound up in the hospital. I mean, it was epic. So, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, the thing about those fights, and I remember it so clearly, and I was into it so much, and they were on every magazine cover, from Life magazine to when magazines were read, and Time magazine, Newsweek, Post, the whole deal. And the thing that I think in my lifetime, the two events that lived up to the hype are Ali Frazier. There's no doubt. Those three fights lived up to the hype of the fights of the century, especially number one. And then Secretariat, who the other day, the Belmont, he won by 30. Those two events lived up to the hype, but Secretariat to a much lower degree. I mean, people say, can you imagine if they had Twitter back then? But you know what? Back then, there were hundreds of magazines, thousands of newspapers, hundreds of radio shows. It was covered about as good as you could cover something for a full year on every major platform.
Absolutely. You didn't need social media back then.
Right.
Regular media covered it heavily. You remember, it's on the cover of Life magazine, the photos after the fight. Frank Sinatra took those photos. I mean, it was a massive celebrity and just worldwide event. It was on a Monday, back when big fights were on a Monday night, Madison Square Garden. I mean, it was epic.
And the way that they had them dressed, the way that it was flashy, they fought basically, folks, and I know hopefully most of you have seen this fight, the first one especially, but the other two weren't bad either. They fought like light heavyweights. And maybe nowadays that's what they would be, considered the gargantuan heavyweights we have now. But they basically fought, because Ali was as fast as a light heavyweight. We saw that. And Frazier basically was the cruiserweight type of guy in a way that Evander Holyfield was, wasn't he?
Agreed. And also, Frazier just kept moving forward. I mean, Ali knew how to dance, fight going backwards and give him angles and stuff like that. Frazier was just like a little Mack truck. Nothing could stop him that night. Just kept moving forward, and nothing would intimidate him. All of Ali's best shots. And also, Mike, you had two undefeated men who had claims to the heavyweight title. It's interesting that it happened again recently with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. But really, compare those two fights. And listen, the first fight with Wilder and Fury was incredibly dramatic. That said, they can't compare. I mean, again, this was two guys laying it all on the line. Credit in the world in the first fight, and even Wilder. But these were two talented fighters. And honestly, I think Deontay Wilder has been exposed to be a very limited one-punch kind of fighter. And we certainly saw that in the rematch. Whereas Ali Frazier, you never knew. Even the third fight, which was really, Ali took it thinking, we'll do something nice for Joe Frazier. And nobody told Joe Frazier that this was just like a gift. And he came to win. And there's that classic go-between that the two had inside the ring where Ali told Frazier, they told me you were washed up. And Frazier said they lied and kept hitting him.
I know.
And Ali had him blind. I mean, my God, going into that 14th round, the only guy that stopped that fight was Eddie Futch, Frazier's cornerman, saying, Joe, you're blind. You can't see. And Frazier was still willing to go. And what happens? Ali, they raise his hand, and he immediately collapses to the canvas because it was like 110 in the ring. And as Ali said, it was the closest to death he ever felt. So maybe blind Frazier could have gone into that 14th round, and even not being able to see, intimidate Ali enough to quit. You never know. It was, really three dramatic fights.
Yeah, outstanding fights, and just good suspense. The whole ball of wax you had with Ali Frazier. I want to talk about movies. First of all, I watch a lot of TCM, as you know. I know you like to watch it too. Sometimes the movies are lame, sometimes they aren't. I mean, TCM would like to say that every movie that they show, the old movies were great, but I think 90% of the old movies weren't that good, to be honest with you. There was that special 10% like there is now. I mean, look, I still can't get, let me ask you a question, because I did read there was some sort of mix-up with these two because of their names. And I know you know about Ann Southern and Ann Sheridan, okay?
Yes.
Basically two blondes with basically the same names. And I watched some of Ann Sheridan, or was it Ann Southern? I gotta believe back in the day when you watch things like the Robert Cummings, Ronald Reagan, Kings Row. Who is it? Is it Ann Southern? Or is it, you know what I mean? But I watched a lot of the old movies. I've been watching a lot of the old movies lately, and I'll be honest with you. Since the quarantine, I found out something. They don't make movies like they used to. Thank God for some of thank God for that, maybe, because a lot of the old movies blow, don't they?
Yeah, well, no, you're right about that. I mean, MGM used to put out, especially at the height of the Depression, they were putting out a movie every week, a new movie a week, 52 a year. And, I mean, it was escapism. It's just like television today where, I would say the majority of the movies, they weren't that good. I mean, God, I told you, I saw for the first time a couple weeks ago, The Bride Came COD. And it's this Jimmy Cagney, Betty Davis movie.
I know which one
it is. You think it's going to be great because it's Jimmy Cagney and Betty Davis. And
it was horrible.
It was horrible. And it's classic. The heiress is being flown to have her wedding across country, and Jimmy Cagney's the pilot, and they're they don't like each other, and then at the end of the movie they fall in love. It was horrible. And I felt Betty Davis was really miscast. And it's funny because I was reading Jimmy Cagney's autobiography at the same time, and I was really pleased to say even Jimmy Cagney's like, yeah, that wasn't funny. It was meant to be funny. Bad script. We just didn't have good chemistry in that film.
It was horrible. Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
When you read it, did you read it to yourself subconsciously when you're reading the book in his voice?
Oh, absolutely. My God. Cagney's
well, then I got drunk, and I drove my car and almost didn't make it home, see?
And also, he liked to create limericks, and the book is just peppered with little rhymes and little poems and stuff that he made. And he's talking about carousing with Pat O'Brien and all the great, old Warner Brother character actors.
Pat O'Brien may be the worst actor who ever lived.
Oh, I like Pat O'Brien. I love him.
I watched him today. He's a hack. Come on, Shake. You think Pat O'Brien? I liked him in New Rockney. I'll give you that.
Well, New Rockney, but I'll tell you, I like an older movie, 58 or 59, The Last Hurrah with Spencer Tracy.
Yeah, that's not
Spencer
bad.
Tracy is like, he's a machine politics mayor, and, Pat O'Brien's part of the political machine. And, I think that's a great role for Pat. And also, I'll give you one from the 70s. Him and Myrna Loy played Burt Reynolds' parents in The End, the movie that Burt Reynolds is trying to kill himself. And he's hilarious in it. And Burt Reynolds gives him a bottle of whiskey, and he's like, you never forget the holy water, do you, son? And it's fantastic, man. No, I'm telling you, Pat O'Brien is hilarious in that movie. Very, very funny.
I just thought he was okay, but I know he was pals with Cagney, that whole group over there back in the 30s and 40s. I watched he was on a movie today with John Garfield where he plays a warden, and Garfield, of course, is in prison. He wasn't bad there, but, I could take him, I could leave him, but I get it. Now, comic books, you ready?
Sure.
Sergeant Rock and Easy Company. Remember those comics?
Yes, they were the best. They were the best.
They were Army guys, right?
Yes, it was incredible. Joe Kubert was the artist, and Robert Kanigher was the writer. And it was great. It didn't glorify war. It was all about the pain of war. And they were very adult. They were very, very adult. They started in the 50s, in the very late 50s, and ran regularly through the 80s. And they did not glorify war. They were very, very serious. And, Joe Kubert was kind of, he was like a Norman Rockwell for comics. I mean, the emotions you'd see on his faces were just incredible. And the guy lived to his late 80s and was still making beautiful comics right till the end. Unbelievable stuff. So, yeah, I'm a massive you know, I mean, Marvel had, you know, everyone knows Nick Fury from the Marvel movies. And
sure.
He started up as a
Sergeant Fury was a good comic book. Sergeant Fury was good.
It was good, but I think Sergeant Rock was the best of them all as far as war comics. And the worst of them all, Mike, worst of all the Army comic books, Sad Sack. Horrible. Ugly. Not funny. Not funny.
I didn't like Beetle Bailey that much either, to be honest with you. You know,
I like Beetle Bailey.
Yeah. You know, it's a remarkable comic. A remarkable comic is Bazooka Joe, and I'll tell you why. I'd collect bottles as a kid. You used to get 2 cents a bottle and a nickel for a quart. They were glass bottles, Dick, and if you brought them into the store, they'd give you actual money. So we'd collect bottles, all right? So then we'd buy maybe a box of Snaps for 2 cents. Maybe if you had a good day, you'd get a quarter's worth of stuff. But the bottom line was, to me, Bazooka Joe, you'd buy for 1 cent, and you could still do it, a piece of bubble gum, and there's like a story, a comic, like 5, I guess, segments, five little segments. To me, I think that's a marketing genius.
Yeah, I mean, it was a built-in little comic strip inside the bubblegum wrap. And you're right. And also, they were like trading stamps. If you collected them all, like, you could, like, you know, get a stopwatch or something like that. You know, they had, like, a catalog that if you collected, like, 100 or whatever, you could turn them in. I don't know who's going to collect 100 Bazooka Joes. I got to be honest. I appreciate you loving them. And the gum was good, and it was a good price. But, yeah, I got to be honest. I think Sad Sack was just 2 notches below Bazooka Joe in my book.
Oh, there's no doubt. Bazooka Joe deserves all the accolades in the world. You know, you're a kid. You're a kid. It's 90 degrees. You go to the corner store. You go to the store. You buy some Bazooka Joe. You read a little story. You know, play a little ball. Have a little. But I'm with you 100%. See, you're in your world. Sad Sack should be eliminated, right, Jake?
Oh my God! And it ran on forever. I'm like, who is publishing this? It's horrible. Sad Sack.
Sack.
Jerry Lewis made a Sad Sack movie, if I remember correctly.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, he did, and it wasn't very good, to be honest with you. Now let's go to television. You brought up something the other day when I talked to you on the phone when we were talking about you coming on. That was unbelievable. You brought up that Clint Walker is Cheyenne Bodie, okay, which was it's on the Western Channel, and I think the Western Channel's getting a revitalization, if you will, because of Rick Dalton and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Believe me, even Bibi watches Bibi now after seeing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was about a guy that was in episodes of Bounty Law. She watches Lawman now. I mean, and stuff like that on the Western Channel, because she saw what happened at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I tell her, they used to churn out these episodes like it was nothing. I don't care if it's The Rifleman, Cheyenne, you name it. But you brought up a point, and I don't know if it was your idea or if it had been brought up, that Clint Walker should have been considered for Superman.
Yeah, it's my own observation, because he was such a giant man with such a massive physique. And, my God, you put him in the costume.
He was huge.
He would have been a tremendous Superman. And also, what they like to do with the stories even now, where Superman, beyond the strength and the superpowers and stuff, is a sensitive guy. I mean, he would have, but still strong. And I think Walker would have been great. And I'm totally with you, Mike. I love those Westerns. And you're right, from like the late 50s, through the early 70s. I mean, well, like 15 years, there were always like several dozen Westerns all on at the same time. People couldn't get enough of them. I mean, Bonanza and Gunsmoke are classics, but these other ones were really well written as well.
Hey, wait, you don't know what it's like to be a kid. You got one TV. You got to make a decision in your life. Are you watching Sugarfoot? Are you watching Cheyenne? Okay. Or are you going to watch Tombstone Territory? They're all on at the same time here.
Absolutely.
Right?
And also, like some of the weird ones, too, like there was The Deputy with Henry Fonda was the sheriff in that show.
That didn't last long, did it?
No, but that's the thing. I find those shows fascinating. And just like you said, in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it was, I think, Lancer. was
you
the
know
show
what
that
was,
he was
you
on.
know what was sad? Jimmy Stewart was Babe Ruth on the Boston Braves at the end of his career when he did episodic TV. Don't you think?
Oh, I love that show. He made that show.
Yeah, but I know we're prejudiced towards Jimmy Stewart, but he was basically doing dinner theater for him. He was a massive star. And you know what? He never let his ego get in the way, man.
It only lasted one season. It was called Hawkins. And,
right.
And it was weird, Mike. How about this? It alternated every other week with Shaft with Richard Roundtree. So how about that? You're watching Shaft one week, and then the next week you got Jimmy Stewart as the Southern lawyer with Strother Martin as his Paul Drake, if you want to put it in Perry Mason terms, his investigator. And not Charlie. There's a murder we got to figure out. and then the next week you're back with John Shaft in the mean streets of Chicago. What the hell's going on?
Jimmy Stewart's probably the greatest ever. The guy I watched a Western with him the other day. He was fantastic. I mean, the guy is just he changed his persona a couple times. I mean, I'm waiting. It's got to be. There's got to be a movie someday in the works for him. On him, there's got to be. The guy was a war hero.
I don't know who could play him, but you're right, and also his personal story.
Chris Collingsworth.
Obviously. Who?
Chris Collingsworth.
Did you say?
Chris Collingsworth, the NFL guy. You ever see him?
Well, he could play. He
acts just like him.
He does. He looks like older Jimmy Stewart. I'll give you that. He
Right.
could have done it 30 years ago. You're right. But Jimmy Stewart, Jimmy Stewart was haunted by his experience in World War II, and it was reflected in his movies. And all those Westerns that he made with Anthony Mann in the 50s became very dark. Because, Jimmy Stewart was kind of that happy, light comedy sort of actor in so many movies. And, of course, he had Mr. Smith before the war in 1939.
Wait a minute, hold on. What was my horse's name?
Wasn't it Pie? I want to say
it was Pie. 35 years on that white road.
That great documentary about Jimmy Stewart with Johnny Carson.
Oh, that's where Pie became a big star.
Well, it's on, Mike, as you know, and we've talked about it, YouTube has all these great TV shows.
Yes, they do.
That people recorded on VCRs and threw up on YouTube. And, I mean, really, things that don't run on TV regularly anymore. And that Jimmy Stewart, Johnny Carson interview, biography show and everything is one of them. And he talks a lot about Pie in that movie and stuff. That's great.
Yeah, it really is. We're with our buddy John Shauntres. And now, ladies and gentlemen, shift over to the chat board to my buddy Aldo Gandia. What's up, Al?
Well, we got a lot of activity in the chat room, and Shaky, I want to start with you. We got some questions. Lady Bear 83, who joins us every week on a lot of our shows here on the network, she has just started following boxing, and one of the things that irritates her about boxing is the judging in boxing, the referee scores, and so forth. What are your thoughts about, what boxing has done to try to correct that problem, the decades-old issue of just fights that appear to be rigged?
Well, I'll tell you, Lady Bear and Aldo, I honestly think boxing judging got worse when, in an effort to make the sport more safe, they cut the rounds from 15 to 12, which I didn't mind, but leaving it an even number of rounds, that's why we see all these draws that we've been seeing lately. And it's almost mathematically impossible to have a decisive win because, I mean, it's just you really have to dominate. Otherwise, it could easily wind up a draw. And honestly, I mean, it's tough because it's state by state, it's country by country, even the big fights. And also there likely is still corruption going on where if someone's not getting juiced as far as picking a fighter, there's definitely a house fighter. When Oscar De La Hoya is the promoter and his fighter is the champion, and or the one of the two fighters, guess who's probably going to win or likely going to be matched with a lesser talented fighter? And I think all of that has contributed to poor judgment. And but I really think mostly it's the rounds. I say make it as unlucky as it would be. Make it a 13-round championship fight or make it an 11-round championship fight. But I think that would fix a lot of problems when it comes to scoring.
Q from Cincy has a question. He asks, is the heavyweight division coming back? And on top of that, I'll add this. I just got this over my phone. Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury have agreed on a 2-fight deal. Promoter Eddie Hearn revealed it on Wednesday that the two have reached an agreement. These are two of Britain's champions, their rival champions. So is the heavyweight division making a comeback, and what do you make of this announcement of Joshua Fury?
Oh, absolutely. No, I truly think so. And honestly, as poor as Andy Ruiz looked in the rematch against Joshua, I think he could get his act together and still be a threat. There are 4 to 5 very, very good heavyweights out there, and Joshua and Fury are at the top. I mean, Fury clearly is at the top of the pyramid. Joshua redeemed himself in the rematch against Ruiz. Deontay Wilder is still a one-punch threat, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens with his career and how it moves forward. If he chooses to move forward, I hope he does, because I'd like to see him become a more complete fighter. And also, yeah, I mean, I think those 2 fights with Tyson Fury were amazing. The first fight with Ruiz and Joshua was an epic fight that nobody saw coming. So, yeah, I think there is excitement. And as they always say, as the heavyweight division goes, that's where boxing goes. I mean, the diehards, we all watch the lower weights. But right now, with a healthy heavyweight division, once we get completely out of the COVID thing, I mean, Top Rank had a card last night to kind of test the waters in Vegas with limited attendance and everything. But no, I'm for it, and I'm glad that this deal has been made with Joshua and Fury. I think it's going to be 2 epic fights.
Yeah, there was that fight last night. Shakur Stevenson really did a job on Felix Caraballo. And I've got a little sound from that. Let me play that for you guys because I thought this was interesting.
Ooh, that right hand was clipping. He drove that right hand down, and now Stevenson has Caraballo in trouble.
It's the beauty. It's what I've been talking about. This is why this young man is so good. He does this all night long.
And that is from ESPN, and this is the knockout punch that happened in the 6th round. Stevenson knocking out his opponent.
Hopelessness with Caraballo. He knew he would be outclassed, outskilled, and he goes down here in round number 6, halfway through round 6, as Shakur Stevenson placed the money punch. And look at the reaction of Caraballo. A one and done from Shakur Stevenson.
Now, that's interesting on a lot of different levels because you just hear the snap of the punches from Stevenson, but also it's a beautiful knockout, a punch to the gut. The guy goes down, and there's no reaction from the crowd because there is no reaction. There is no crowd.
The emotion of the announcer. Yeah. I thought he was ordering coffee. What the hell's going on?
Yeah.
That's horrible announcing.
Right. I mean, it's just like Korean baseball when we watch Korean baseball. I mean, it's weird without the audience. We'll eventually get back. I mean, eventually there'll be a vaccine and things will get normal. It's going to take a while, though, and that's why even these fights that they've announced with Fury and excuse me, I'm blanking right now because it's early in the morning. Anthony Joshua, absolutely. I mean, these are fights that they won in the 02. One of the biggest, or Wembley, places like that, the biggest venues in Britain. How's that going to work with social distancing? It's going to be a very interesting time in sports in general, and I agree with you. And yeah, I mean, part of the drama in boxing is seeing a big shot and that, from the crowd that you get.
Yeah. But you got to have the announcer involved. The announcer's got to get excited, too.
What help?
Just can't pretend, okay, there's no crowd. So, he gets him, no, man, he gives him a shot, boom, But, hey, that's the way it is without the crowd, Shaky. They're going to start racing. They're racing NASCAR with nobody in the stands, and
right,
stuff like that. So it's all changing. Anything else, my friend Aldo?
Oh, we got so much activity, I'm telling you. Now, people are wondering, what happened to the heavyweight division over the years. I mean, when the three of us were growing up, there was
the best.
The best time for heavyweights. And then, it's been decades since we had those heavyweights that, everybody in the country would just stop what they're doing. You're going to watch the fight this Saturday and so forth. Shaky, in your opinion, what happened to the heavyweights? Did they go play football or what's the deal?
Well, I'm nodding right now, Aldo. That is part of the problem as far as American heavyweights. I mean, literally, people like Emmanuel Stewart were scouting Division III basketball and football players and saying, hey, you want to try boxing instead of not doing well at the sport you intended to do. But also, I think promoters got very gun-shy about sacrificing an undefeated record. So everybody got very safe, and that really hurt things as well, that nobody wanted to risk their undefeated records. But also the Klitschkos, both brothers, were ridiculously dominant in that post-Lennox Lewis era. And truly, that's a credit to their ability. They were gigantic. I mean, both were well over 6'4". Both were well over 270 pounds in shape. I mean, people were even saying maybe we should have a different weight class called like Dreadnought or something like that for these super heavyweights that were so much bigger than your classic, Evander Holyfield at 210 and 6'2",
Last question. Let me squeeze one more in, Mike. And I'm trying to find out who wrote this. I think it was Q from it was Oil Pan Willie.
I love Q from Cincy.
Yeah, and Oil Pan Willie. We love them all. But
Oil Pan.
But the question is, are we ever going to see a movie with DC heroes versus Marvel heroes?
Probably not.
No, huh?
Probably not. No, I mean they're rival movie companies, and no, unless it's funny because AT&T owns Warner and Disney or Warner Brothers and stuff, and there's talk that they might divest the comic book portion, but I don't think AT&T and Warner's will ever give up their superheroes. They make too much money. They make money on television, let alone in films.
Yeah.
So
you know what?
It'd be great, but no, you're never going to see the Justice League fight the Avengers or the X-Men. It's just never going to happen.
Let me tell you something. There's two franchises, okay, and the rest of them can get in a group, okay, and say hi to each other at a cocktail party. Superman and Batman. The rest of them could say hi. I know they were the precursors. They're the founding members. And you know what? If it's DC against Marvel, I'm biased because I grew up with DC mostly. I'm taking Superman. I am. Unless they got...
Yeah, but I'll tell you, Mike, those Marvel movies have outperformed
the DC
movies by hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, Marvel is $1 billion franchise, the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, that's because I think if you prorate Superman when it first came out, the first one, I think it did pretty well.
It did fine. It did fine, but again... Yeah, but it did fine. It made like $600 million, which is nothing to sneeze at. But these other movies, they make $800-900, even $1 billion.
Well, it's 2020, John. It's 2020. It's not 1978 with Christopher Reeve could walk that.
See. I see. You're talking about the original Richard Donner.
Well, yeah. I mean, they were the ones that really laid it out. They're the Red Granges, for the National Football League. The guys that did the grunting and the grinding, even though they're tremendous franchises. I could watch the Michael Keaton one all day long in the first Superman, and then the rest I'm not that much into. But Shake, I'll tell you what, it's outstanding stuff as usual. You bring it to say, what are you doing now? You just hanging at home? What's up?
No, I've been cranking out episodes of Word Balloon, both on audio as podcasts, and also I've been doing a lot of video. In fact, tomorrow I'm doing 3 interviews all day. I'm doing one at 3 o'clock Chicago time, one at 10 o'clock Chicago time, and then one at midnight for the West Coast. 3 different guys. And one of them is a Batman interview. It's The Batman's Grave is a brand new story, and the artist Brian Hitch is joining me. And then they're planning a big Justice League event called Dark Metal, and Scott Snyder's going to be on at 9 o'clock Chicago time for that interview. And then a little Star Trek talk at midnight with my buddy Rob Meyer-Burnett, one of the fine directors who's made a couple Trek movies and is quite a Star Trek expert. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I lost my wise guy card in Vegas when you shanghaied me to go to a Star Trek exhibit. The next thing you know, I'm being jostled around inside some rocket ship. It was unbelievable. It was funny. It was a lot of fun, but it was so shaky. So John Shaky, folks,
man.
check out Shaky. Check him out on John Word Balloon. He has great podcasts. You were up last night with somebody till at 10 o'clock, right? Doing something.
Yeah, I had my buddy Terry Dodson on, who is a great Marvel artist, and he's a West Coast guy, so I accommodate the people on the West Coast. A little bit later for the East Coast and the Central Time. But yeah, man, it's Word Balloon has a YouTube channel called Word Balloon, and then also it does, if you go on Twitter on @JohnWordBalloon, it'll take you to Periscope, and also I do it on Facebook. I do all three platforms simultaneously on video, and they're fun, and that's growing. The audio is still the big winner. People like to listen and do their own thing, but the videos are doing good.
Good, buddy. Appreciate it, John. We appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on. Aldo, it was always good talking to you guys.
Always great. Thank you, Shaky.
Always great, Shaky.
He's
John
the best.
Shaky Siuntres. Man, God, he's got stories, and he's boxing, comics, movies, television. Sergeant Rock. Did you read those Army comic books, Aldo?
Yeah, I did. I wasn't passionate about them, but I'd pick them up. I'd read them. And I have to disagree. I enjoyed Sad Sack. I don't think it was... I don't think it was comic art.
It's been grating on you for the last 10 minutes. It's been grating on you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was okay. It was simple to read. The type was huge. The jokes were like super simple. It was a good little. It was like the equivalent of Bazooka Joe, funny. Because I loved those comics. I purchased those bubblegums. They were a penny each when I was a kid.
Isn't Bazooka Joe genius?
Oh gosh, yes. And then it had the fortune down at the bottom. It was.
The fortune. I forgot about the fortune.
Yes.
Right at the bottom of the comic, you knew the characters.
Right.
It was unbelievable. You buy a penny piece of gum.
That's right.
And there's an inch of copy of five different episodes of episodes of the of Bazooka Joe. Just tremendous, man.
I got a quick Bazooka Joe story that I'm going to share with you.
I love Bazooka Joe's story. I'm very partial to him.
I'm in 6th grade. I'm headed to school on a cold winter Chicago morning, and I stop at the store, and I got a nickel. Yeah, I got a nickel. I get me 5 Bazooka Joes. I put one in my mouth, and I put 4 in my back pocket. I'm early to school, so we're playing around on the ice outside the school building, and I slip and fall on my ass, and all day long my ass is hurting me. It is just killing me. Well, what happened is that the Bazooka Joes froze, and they were hard as rocks. So when I fell on my ass, it created a cut. I still have a scar on my ass from those 4 frozen Bazooka Joes. And
That's unbelievable.
I'm not going to take a picture and post.
That you can't make up a story like that.
That's right. It is totally.
And by the way, Bazooka Joe, sometimes you get them. They're hard to begin with.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Add a little.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We've had a lot of stuff going on, and we've had a lot of fun with John Shaky Siuntres. Let's talk real quick about Schuster and Grobstein. What's going on with those guys?
Well, I'm telling you, this was all possible because Fat Mike had on David Schuster. Had him on for 5 consecutive shows on his Monday PM show, and they talked about The Last Dance. And then I kind of threw it out there. I wonder if David would like to do a podcast. And Fat Mike mentioned it to Schuster. Schuster called me up. We talked a couple of times, and he talked to Les Grobstein. And for those of you listeners out there who don't know those 2 names, I mean, I'll turn it over to you, Mike. You can talk about Les Grobstein and David Schuster far better than I can because you've worked alongside them for many, many years.
I remember when I really fought hard for Les once. There was a point where management didn't keep him overnights. I think they went to syndicated radio for a short time, but I really fought hard for him because he's a staple in overnight radio. And then you got David, who's been around for forever, and he still looks the same to me. There's something haunting about him about that. But no, he's a good guy. Known them both for 30 years, 25, 30 years. We all went to war together, and we did pretty well. In fact, we did tremendous, so it's going to be fun. And
I'm telling you, Mike, they've got so many great stories, and I can't wait to...
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, come on, you kidding?
I can't wait to get the three of you guys together here at the home studio, and for the three of you guys, just go 2 hours talking, and it is going to be radio gold.
I'll do 2 hours with Schuster and the Grabber. Those are my guys.
Yeah, they love you. They were sharing some stories. In fact, that story that you just shared about you sticking up for the Grabber and fighting for him and so forth.
Oh, I fought hard for the Grabber. He's an institution. I don't know who was in charge at the time. So you can't get rid of him overnight. Pay him something.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
Exactly.
And they did for a while, but they brought him back with all due respect. So.
Right. And here's what is really cool about this show. Grobstein has this photographic memory. I mean, you talk about...
The Rain Man, they call him. We call him the Rain Man.
It's amazing. I mean, we're talking about a game in 1986. You'll say the night before, the White Sox won 8-3. It's like, where do you get this from?
Well, I'll bring up when I'm on with him. Mm-hmm. I'll bring up that the other day was an anniversary of a game I was at in 1963 at Wrigley Field. Ernie Banks hit 3 home runs, okay? 2 of them off Sandy Koufax. The Cubs lost the game anyway. Imagine that.
Wow.
You had 2 home runs off Sandy Koufax.
Unbelievable.
And the second home run, and Ernie's one of only like 3 guys in history that ever hit multiple homers off Koufax in one game. And Koufax, when he gave up the second homer, which Banks launched into the left field bleachers, threw his mitt 15. You know, when you're a kid, you throw your mitt in the air like a kid. Couldn't believe he gave up another homer, threw his mitt 15 feet in the air, and caught it once he threw it in the air. But, like, what kind of pitch should I just give this guy? Because he just launched it. And the Cubs lost the game 11-8. It was a good ball game. I was a kid. I mean, I was, I don't even know. I was like 11. 12 years old, and I was at the game. I'll never forget it. I mean, and yesterday was the anniversary, and I know Grobber would tell me, well, you know, it was 66 degrees. I don't care if it's 66 degrees. See, Grobber can tell you what was on the menu in the press box.
Yes.
He can tell you what the temperature was. He'll tell you basically how he felt that day, how his parents were doing. No, just get to the damn thing.
It truly is amazing. And so those guys share all these wonderful stories. And in fact, in their debut episode, they get into detail on the disco demolition because that was Schuster's first major sports.
And that was Jeff Schwartz, Spaceball's idea. Mike Veck and Bill Veck and all those guys, Spaceball and Steve Dahl. It was Jeff Schwartz's original idea. He's been on some specials in the past, but he's associated with us here at Bears Barroom too.
Right, Jeff Schwartz was the mastermind behind it, along with Steve Dahl.
Absolutely.
And so they share that story, and then they shared the Lee Elia story. Les Grobstein was in the clubhouse and got
the audio.
He got one of the most classic rants by any sports personality in the history of broadcasting. He got every single F word, and we have that audio on their debut episode with Grobstein sharing that story. So that's really cool. And then I want to share one story that David Schuster shared on the debut episode. This is David Schuster talking about Walter Payton and how he loved to pull pranks, not only on his teammates, but on reporters.
Anyway, Walter Payton was obviously one of the all-time jokesters, okay? And
sure was.
He loved torturing, if you will, in a sort of kind way, but not really, torturing reporters. I mean, he did that to teammates, but he really loved, getting under the skin, if you will, of the reporters. Well, I guess I must have had sucker written all over me, because one time he came out of the locker room doors, and he was running up onto the field, and I was standing, I guess, in his path. He picked me up. I mean, he was the strongest human being I've ever witnessed in my life. The man was a absolute blank brick house, okay? Not Jack Brickhouse
right,
either.
Exactly. S Brickhouse.
Yes, an S Brickhouse. Unbelievable strong. Anyway, he gave me a wedgie. I was going to call it a hinderbinder, but whatever. He picked me up by my back strap, if you will, and just had me hanging off the ground like a yo-yo.
So I got to ask you, because you had a lot of interaction with Sir Walter Payton, Mike. Did he ever play a practical joke on you?
Oh, are you kidding me? Every time I read a commercial live, okay, we'd be at either Carmine's in Rosemont or at Vinny's in Schaumburg. And it would be me, Jiggs, and Peyton. And we all had our own individual mics, but they weren't on the headset. They were mic stands.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I read a commercial, he'd hit my mic and move it, and stuff like that. So I finally got fed up with it. See, here's the thing about Walter that nobody knows. Walter would pull pranks, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't like pranks pulled on him, okay?
Oh.
So I had my buddy Louie look in the parking lot for Peyton's Ferrari. I think he had a Ferrari at the time. WP34. But he didn't want to be noticed. Okay? I used to tell him that. Yeah. But you don't want to be noticed. WP34, a convertible Ferrari. But you don't want to be noticed. So I bust his balls on that all the time. Right?
Yes.
So Louis finds it. I go, when you find his car, wait till the show starts.
That's awesome.
And take his plates off it.
Oh, my God.
And walk in and show him to him. And walk out. He doesn't know who you are. Okay? So, hey, everybody, Mike Dorgan, blah, 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 Dan Jiggets, and with our buddy Walter Payton, everybody. Nice round of applause here at Vinny's in Schaumburg. Hey, Mike, how you doing? Hey, Dan, how you doing? Hey, that guy's got my plates in his hand. Louis, WP34 plates walking through the crowd, and he shows Walter. He actually almost turned white, no doubt about it. And so that was a good time. And then there was another time.
Mm-hmm.
He hosted the golf outing, and I and my 5 buddies all showed up in a van, okay? And Peyton was there to greet, right?
Mm-hmm.
We show up in the van. I still got the picture. I should post it. And 2 guys got Emmett Smith jerseys on. 2 guys got Barry Sanders jerseys on. And 2 guys got Gale Sayers jerseys on when we drop out. He was not amused. He was pissed all day long. Do you believe that? Talk about Jordan having a red ass. So he didn't like it taken out on him.
That's amazing. Yeah. I could tell that Walter had that competitive spirit. He goes, I'm not talking to you right now. I'm not talking to you right now, Mike. I go, why? You know why? I thought he was playing at first. But he was
I'm
serious.
hosting golf outing. You come out with those numbers. Oh yeah, but we had a great relationship, and he was a good guy. So yeah, Peyton was full of pranks, but he didn't like pranks pulled on him.
No,
that I know personally. Believe me.
Mm-hmm. Hey, got to tell you that the big part of the news happening this week in Chicago sports is this whole Sammy Sosa issue. David Kaplan over at ESPN 1000 had him on as a guest, and the big issue is, and I'm dying to hear your opinion, is should the Chicago Cubs welcome him back to the organization to throw out a pitch, to just be at the ballpark? There is a very icy relationship between the Cubs organization towards Sosa. Sosa said in the interview he's dying to come back. He's just waiting for a phone call. What are your thoughts? Okay, I knew Sammy very well.
Mm-hmm. I remember Jiggs and I had Sammy in when he was with the White Sox. He was about 175, 180 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
No man in the history of the game, because he was just an average ball player, else.
Right.
Average. He wasn't Bonds. He wasn't Clemens. He wasn't A-Rod. He wasn't Piazza. He wasn't those guys were all Piazza wasn't. But those guys were all studs coming into the league. Sammy was a minor leaguer, played with the White Sox sparingly. They got rid of him. And here's my deal.
Mm-hmm.
It helped him so much.
Mm-hmm.
He cheated. That's it. You can't retire his number, but you can have him throw out the ball. I just don't think you reward somebody like that. And, baseball has a bad habit right now of Well, they have all sorts of issues right now. Mm-hmm. You have the 18 Red Sox, the 17 Astros. They cheated, and you're giving them the title anyway. You have the Sammy Sosa situation. You have some of your announcers who have been involved in illegalities, whether it be pharmaceuticals or what have you, even Pete Rose back in the day with Fox and gambling. So it's sort of puzzling. It seems like the people that commit the offenses do get welcomed back for the most part, but I don't think in the Hall of Fame. And I don't think Sammy's going to make it to the Hall of Fame. Because like I said, I remember him when he couldn't play dead. And he became, I think the mistake that Bonds, McGuire, and Sosa made is they challenged the records of Ruth and Aaron, period.
Well, in that Kaplan interview, and I urge people who are interested in this subject to find that interview. It's a short 15-minute interview that David Kaplan has with Sosa. And one of the things David says...
Go to ESPN 1000. Check it out.
There you go. One of the things that David says that he talked with the hitting coach back then or recently, and he saed that a lot... I'm sorry?
Jeff Pentland.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. I couldn't remember his name.
That's right.
And so Pentland says that a lot of people fail to understand that Sosa really learned the strike zone around.
Jesus Christ. The guy was so... You know what? Canseco was juiced up, too. Yeah. He's another guy that I think was better than he actually was because of being juiced up. Those two guys are the arch criminals of steroids. They are. Yeah. Over Bonds. And Bonds is right there. But Bonds, he didn't have to do it. He just got strung into it. McGuire had acne.
Yes.
I mean, really, when he was 35, he had acne. Come on.
Yeah. Well, Harp4803 says in the chat room,
I love Harp.
He's the best. He says, well, but 95% of the players were doing steroids back then, and there is some truth to that. Maybe 95% is too high a number. Who knows? But
really?
A lot of guys.
95% you think might be a little high? on the judge committee here, everybody's walking, no dead man walking. That's not true, number one. Frank Thomas lost an MVP vote because of Jason Giambi, and I don't care who you name.
Yep.
We're talking Sammy Sosa now.
Right.
That's all we're talking. You can bring up these other guys all you want. I'm telling you right now, Sammy Sosa was so riddled with steroids. And Clemens, too. I was the first guy to step out on Clemens. I said, pitchers do it, too. And I remember a grounds crewman telling me, Mike, Clemens comes into now the clubhouse was a long ways away back then. Remember where the visitors' clubhouse was?
Yeah.
Right field, got to go up over. Used to see the players. Used to be able to look up.
Yep.
He used to rub cream on his arm every inning.
Oh, really?
And the cream, the name of it was blacked out with white athletic tape.
Oh.
And he goes, Mike, I've never seen anything like it. This guy rubs his cream just on that right side of his arm. I knew the kid who was on the grounds crew back then. He's not on now, but back then I had to protect my source, right? So I knew right away that Clemens was doing it. And so it's just those guys sort of abused it. It's a shame about Clemens and Bonds because they were good enough. But why cheat when you're good enough anyway? I don't get it.
Yeah.
I've never understood this. Do you?
Yeah, well, you know, these guys are so competitive that they're always looking for an edge, and some of them.
And they want to make a lot of money.
Exactly. Well, that's your answer right there, right?
Well, of course it is. You know, it's a shame it happened. It really screwed baseball up. Now they're thinking of coming. You know, now these players want their full pay for working a half a season. The owners got some nonsense going on. They're both wrong. I don't care what happens. I don't care if baseball comes back this year. I think baseball's a tough sport to come back and play a partial season. I think you can get away with it in a tournament type setting with the NHL and the NBA, but I don't think really with baseball else, with the records, because it's a record motivated league, I think it's pretty tough to come back at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Last thing regarding Sosa, I'd love to get your comment on it. I think I know where you're going to go with this, but Sosa was asked by Kaplan about how he feels about not being inducted into the Hall of Fame. This was Sammy's response.
Whatever happened has happened. You know, numbers there. You know, I don't have any. Let's say I don't. You know, what can I do? You know, it is not up to me. It's not up to the fans. It is to the writers. So I had to wait, see what's going on. I had to wait, see if you have a chance to get in the Hall of Fame.
Mike, do you think that if he were to admit, yes, I took steroids, and then that he could go into the Hall of Fame with an asterisk, they're on his plaque, they can put some wording on there that he played during the steroids era, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But I feel like he should, just as much as Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. Your thoughts?
He says the numbers are there because you cheated. If you're playing somebody with 7 cards, if you're playing 7-card stud, but I get 10 cards, Aldo,
yeah.
I'm going to beat you every single time, and then I want to go into the card playing Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That's basically what we're talking about here. The numbers are there because he cheated. Pete Rose bet, hey, that's it. He's out. Mm-hmm. Basically, but the bottom line is the numbers being there, that's the problem. The numbers are so extravagantly out of whack.
Yeah.
And everybody knew it then that it's going to be hard for him to get back in. And I like Sammy. I always did. I remember I gave him the nickname the Flash because he was skinny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he looked like he needed a meal when I met him with the White Sox.
That's right.
I'm not kidding you, man.
Right? Uh-huh.
And he just turned into this monster. But, hey, I don't mind them throwing out the first pitch, but I don't think you reward cheaters because, well, they've already done it with the baseball. Baseball's integrity balance, to me, their meter right now, 1 to 10 is a 3. It's a 3, and it's sinking with Manfred and the players and the owners right now.
Hey, we have a
I wanted to get that in before we come back in a few weeks.
Before our hiatus.
Just heard that one.
Among the new listeners in the chat room, there is Zeppelin3205, and
I love it.
He has been listening to you for decades, and he is excited now that he has found you on the Barroom Network.
Thank you, buddy.
And he wants to know if you are going to do Jagbag. So please tell people about Jagbag and answer his question.
Jagbag, Elds, it all started, I said jag off on the air back in the 90s, yes. 93, 90. So commercial comes, and Gleason knocks on the window. Okay? Boom, boom, boom. And he gives me the signal, come over. I want to talk to you at commercial. And Jiggs goes, I wonder what happened there. I go, I think, Jiggs, I said the wrong thing. I'm not sure. Well, I'll see you when you get back. You'll be back in a few minutes. So he goes, you can't say that word on the air. And I go, what word? And he told me, and I said, all right, I've heard it on the air back then. You heard everything on the air back then. It's different now. You can't hear anything on the air. But so he goes, I go, what am I going to do? He goes, you got to think up another word. So I says, Jagbag. I went on. Now it's in the dictionary. It's in the Urban Dictionary. My name gets credit for it. They used to make Jeff Schwartz so mad that it said Jagbag in there, and Jeff's a big backer of mine, and he was a manager at the score. He goes, they should give you credit. You're the one that thought up the name. And one day, I don't know what happened, I got credit for it. So that's how that whole thing started. So maybe we'll do that when we come back.
That would be fun.
On hiatus.
Yes, Fat Mike is in the chat room. He says,
I love Fat Mike.
He's the best. He says that he says Jagbag at least 10 times a day, calling somebody a Jagbag.
Jagbag, yeah, I walked into that one. I got lucky. Hey, look, you roll some sevens, you roll some snake eyes, but that was a definite 7, and it was a great thing. It really, really was. And I think today it would be tough on regular radio to do that segment we used to do.
Yes.
The same with Who You Crapping.
I got to ask, is that going to be...
Those two segments would be tough to do. I think they still do them, but there's no way they're the same. None.
Right. Is that going to... That has to be a scene and maybe a running joke in the movie, the Mike North movie.
Yeah, I just want to get back. I mean,
Yeah.
To making it. I mean, I said late 2020 for, pre-production. We're doing a rewrite of some scenes because we got time because nobody's back.
Right.
They're starting to come back now, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, that might be a scene, but that's something I'm very proud of. I mean, you make up a word and it ends up, I don't care what dictionary it ends up. I don't care if it ends up in the Turkish dictionary, but it's in the Urban Dictionary. Look up Jagbag.
Well, I got to do a video on that to promote that, because that is a really cool word. We even talked about...
Oh, yeah, Jack, that's a part of me.
Oh, man. Oil Pan Willie writes, please let Mike know that my grandpa has been listening to him since he started radio. I told him I listen to you on Bears Barroom now. I can't listen without him. He said you've always been his favorite. He just said that right now. So Oil Pan Willie's
well, you know what?
grandpa.
I just want to say, Barroom, I love Bears Barroom. I love Aldo. Everybody knows it. We got a bunch of new shows. We're going to be back in a few weeks. I'm also going to be on every Friday night. And one of the best, in my opinion, when we do our wagering show here, it's the best podcast wagering show in the country on Bears Barroom, the Mike North Advantage. And that's going to happen soon. And AM 1000, I believe Carmen and I have the prototypical gambling and wagering show on AM 1000. That's on every Friday night and Saturday morning. And Vegas Scores and Odds, hopefully they'll be back in business soon, too. So, everything's starting to move again, else. And, Bears Barroom is building, and, things are going good.
And I got to tell you, I listened to last Friday's episode of The Odds Couple, you and Carmen DeFalco. Just so damn entertaining. You got interviews. I mean, you guys are really have. I mean, he's
very terrific at what he does. He's a good. He's like you. He's a good partner. He's a good leader. Everybody used to think I wanted the action for myself. I never did. I've always, just like when I worked with Andy Furman and Jonas Knox at Fox, they said, well, how do you want to do this? I go, well, I'm replacing the other guy, so I'll be the number 2 guy. Same thing here. I like going off of you, and the same thing with Jigs, and I never cared about that stuff. It's just what your strength is. I'm not a good lead dog, and Carmen's terrific as a lead dog.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of Vegas Scores and Odds, Alex Acevedo in the chat room wants you to pronounce Tony Sacco's name again because he loves the way you do it.
Tony Sacco.
That's just brilliant.
John Anthony, Tony Sacco. Yours truly, Mike North. I love it.
Oh, this has been
funny.
a great show.
You know what? I said to some people, I told Seth Mason, I go, Seth, people are faxing me saying, how did this 10th rate hot dog guy get a job on radio? He can't even speak English. I go, should I improve my English? He goes, you improve your English, you're fired. I go, thank you.
Hey, probably the ultimate compliment that you can be paid. Well, maybe not the ultimate, but one of the best, and certainly true. David Schuster tells me yesterday, Mike North created the Score Sports Radio. He was the best, and you are still the best. You are an incredible talent. I'm going to miss working with you over the next 2 or 3 weeks, but we'll be back, and we'll be better than ever.
We're building things. We'll be back. We're building things. We're getting everybody back in shape. We got a new podcast coming on. We got Shy Fans in the Stands. We got 100 Proof. We got everybody doing that. I mean, come on. We got other shows are going to be coming because some have been on just on, like the phone is on just during football season and some of these other things. So I want to really, I think you need some time off from me. I really no, kid, no, you need to take, you know what, we can take a few weeks off. We're coming back when the gambling lines are back, full tilt, and we're coming back for training camp, and we'll miss everybody, but I'll be on Twitter.
There you go. And Fat Mike said you mentioned every show except his.
I did too. First of all, now little Nicky's, I'm not going golfing with anybody from Bears Barroom, okay? I can't even go golfing on my own. I've been invited by, I love everybody. Little Nicky, I love Fat Mike. Whose show didn't I bring up? Please, dear Lord, help me.
It's 100 Proof.
I brought up 100 Proof.
Oh, yeah, you did. I'm sorry. I can't keep track of all the shows.
You know, it's good. It's good that Fat Mike doesn't have an ego.
You got to have an ego in this business, I'll tell you.
If you don't, you're in trouble, buddy.
That's right. Mike North, I love you. We'll talk to you soon.
Love
okay,
you
brother?
too, man.
All right, brother.